The Buddha walked calmly through the village, his footsteps light yet filled with purpose, attracting the attention of many. Among the crowd, a man stepped forward, his face twisted with anger, determined to confront the wandering ascetic. "You call yourself wise," he began, his voice sharp and piercing, echoing through the gathering of curious villagers. The Buddha turned his gaze toward the man, his expression serene, as though untouched by the venomous words. "You mislead these fools with talk of peace and enlightenment," the man spat, his hostility growing with each syllable. The Buddha remained silent, observing the man like one might study the wind that bends the reeds without breaking them. "Why do you not defend yourself?" the man demanded, his frustration mounting as silence challenged his aggression. The Buddha stepped closer, his eyes reflecting a calm deep as the ocean, addressing the man with unshakable composure. "Tell me," said the Buddha, "if someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, who owns it?" The man blinked, startled by the question, his fury momentarily displaced by curiosity. Like clouds parting to reveal the sky, "If you refuse a gift," the man replied, "then surely it remains with the one who tries to give it." The Buddha inclined his head slightly, as though affirming the logic presented, while the crowd watched the exchange intently. "Indeed," the Buddha said, his voice steady yet light, carrying the weight of wisdom on a breeze of clarity. "In the same way," the Buddha continued, "when one speaks harshly, if you do not accept their words, they remain theirs." The man frowned, his thoughts colliding as he struggled to find a foothold in the wisdom shared through simplicity. "Are you saying that I am responsible for my anger?" the man asked, his hostility now tinged with genuine curiosity. The Buddha nodded gently, allowing his insight to pierce deeper without the force of argument or confrontation. "You carry your anger," the Buddha explained, "like a man burdened by a heavy sack he refuses to set down." The villagers murmured among themselves, their attention shifting from the angry man to the profound truth unfolding before them. "But what if I want you to bear my anger?" the man challenged, his tone sharp again, striving to reassert dominance. The Buddha smiled faintly, the way one does when faced with a child who struggles against lessons of patience. "You may offer your anger," the Buddha replied, "but I choose not to carry it. The choice lies entirely with me." The man opened his mouth to reply, then hesitated, his thoughts shifting as the absence of blame unsettled his expectations. "But your words," the man muttered, "they teach people to ignore confrontation, to reject their duty to defend their honor. Soil, water, sunlight, these must unite for the seed to awaken its potential." A breeze rustled the leaves above, carrying the Buddha's words to every ear present. Science mirrors this understanding in ecosystems and molecular interactions. All things are bound in a web of interdependence. "Justice," the Buddha answered, is clouded by hatred, yet clarified through compassion and understanding. Like water cleansed of mud, the man fell silent, his brow furrowed deeply, as though wrestling with notions larger than his expectations had prepared for. "Do you expect me to abandon my anger? To embrace silence when insulted or challenged by others?" he asked finally. The Buddha took another step forward, his presence unwavering, like the steady drumbeat of waves against immovable cliffs. "Silence," the Buddha said, "is not surrender. It is the space where wisdom grows, where anger finds no fuel to burn." The man shook his head, bewildered, seeking a rebuttal but finding his words unable to contend with the serenity before him. "You think yourself above others," the man accused, reverting to resentment as his ego flailed in the absence of strength. "I do not rise above others," the Buddha replied, "but stand beside them, offering the light of understanding to those willing." "But not everyone wishes to understand," the man said, his tone now softer, like embers cooling after the fire loses fuel. Understanding, the Buddha replied, cannot be forced, only invited. Each must choose whether to carry wisdom or cling to anger. His words hung in the air, as tangible as the ground beneath them. Science calls this cause and effect. I call it karma. Those who refuse, the Buddha answered gently, may still carry their burdens until they are ready to set them aside. The man lowered his gaze. The fierce light in his eyes softened by the weight of reflection and recognition. Perhaps I have been wrong, he muttered, more to himself than to the Buddha. Humbled by the lessons wrapped in kindness, the Buddha did not reply immediately, allowing the man space to find his way through the labyrinth of self-discovery. Can I unlearn anger? The man asked finally, his voice low but carrying the tentative hope of one yearning for change. Anger, the Buddha said, is unlearned through forgiveness, through letting go of the need to grasp what causes you harm. He continued, his hand outstretched as if to touch the stars. Science reveals that these stars, though distant, are made of the same elements as you and I. The man inhaled deeply, the tension in his shoulders loosening as understanding began to seep into the corners of his mind. Do you forgive me? He asked quietly, the words trembling as they escaped the confines of his guarded pride. I forgive all, the Buddha replied, for there is nothing to hold against another when compassion replaces judgment in the heart. The villagers clapped quietly, their admiration expressed not through spectacle, but through the silent gratitude of learning truth. Will I ever find peace? The man asked, almost whispering, the vulnerability in his voice cutting through the remnants of aggression. Peace, the Buddha said, is found within, when you choose to let go of what burdens your mind and heart. The man nodded, his expression unreadable but filled with the stirring complexity of transformation waiting beneath the surface. The Buddha turned to address the gathering, his voice reaching each listener as though directed personally to their lives. When faced with anger or harm, respond not with hatred but with wisdom, for this is the path to peace. The villagers bowed their heads, the resonance of the teachings settling like seeds in soil ready for nourishment. The man stepped back, his head lowered, as though humbled by the revelation of how far his heart had yet to travel. The Buddha turned, walking toward the horizon, his steps light yet filled with purpose, leaving echoes of truth behind. The evening deepened, stars now scattered like jewels across the velvet sky. The gathering disbanded, each disciple carrying the Buddha's teachings like a flame illuminating their path. As the sun set on the village, the memory of wisdom lingered, carried like whispers through the rhythm of the evening breeze. The man exhaled deeply, the burden of anger beginning to loosen, his soul searching for the light that promises peace. Do not seek all answers at once, Ananda. Wisdom unfolds like the petals of a lotus, slowly and with patience. Master, the disciple began, his voice trembling, I face someone whose words and actions harm me deeply, yet I feel powerless. The Buddha glanced at the young man, his gaze steady, reflecting understanding without judgment, ready to share his insight. Imagine, the Buddha began, a fire burning brightly, consuming everything around it, fueled by wood piled without cease. The disciple frowned, struggling to grasp the metaphor, his mind tangled with questions and the urgency of his suffering. A fire cannot burn itself, the Buddha continued. Its existence depends entirely on the fuel it consumes to stay alive. The disciples listened intently, the metaphor sparking reflections within their own hearts, weaving itself into their individual struggles. When faced with harm, the Buddha explained, do not offer the fuel of your anger, which intensifies their fire further. But Master, the disciple asked, how can one avoid reacting when words sting and actions feel unbearable? Mindfulness, the Buddha replied, is the shield against the arrows of harm, protecting your heart from the fire of negativity. The disciple nodded slowly, absorbing the lesson, though uncertainty still lingered like smoke refusing to disperse. What if their harm persists? The disciple asked, revealing the depth of his worry, the magnitude of his suffering. The Buddha looked to the horizon, his mind traveling to where wisdom awaited those prepared to seek its truths. Negativity, the Buddha said, is like a storm. It cannot last forever, though its intensity may test your strength. The disciple pondered the words, considering their relevance to his life, his trials, and the nature of his own responses. But Master, he said, what if the storm destroys everything before it fades, leaving nothing but emptiness behind? The Buddha turned his gaze back to the disciple, his eyes reflecting profound compassion, the light of understanding clear. Strength, the Buddha said, is not measured by what survives a storm, but by the resilience to rebuild when peace returns. The fisherman hesitated, puzzled by the simplicity of the answer. But Master, what of the ripples already set in motion? Buddha smiled gently, his voice like the rustling of leaves. The Buddha extended his hand, plucking a leaf gently from the tree above, its vibrant green catching the sunlight. This leaf, the Buddha said, holding it delicately, receives the light of the sun, yet shadows pass, unable to stain it. The disciple frowned, struggling to connect the metaphor to his reality. The world where harm felt all too tangible. Your mind, the Buddha explained, is like this leaf, capable of embracing light even when shadows attempt to overtake it. The disciples murmured softly among themselves, the lesson resonating differently for each listener, yet deeply for all present. But Master, the disciple asked, is light enough to overcome the darkness cast by those who act without compassion? Light, the Buddha said, is the truth within your heart, unshakable if nurtured, impervious to harm when illuminated by wisdom. Master, are these channels the habits we form and the thoughts we entertain? Buddha's smile widened, his eyes twinkling with approval. Yes, and science now speaks of this truth as neuroplasticity, the reshaping of the brain through experience. The group murmured in wonder, the connection between ancient wisdom and modern science filling them with awe. Master, the scholar continued, how can thoughts reshape the world around us? Buddha picked up a small pebble and tossed it into the lake. Compassion, the Buddha said, is acting wisely, offering help without anger. For anger clouds judgment and prolongs harm for all. But how can one act without anger when others suffer unjustly? The disciple pressed, his heart longing for justice. Act, the Buddha replied, not with rage, but with purpose. Seek resolution that builds peace, not destruction that escalates harm. The disciples exchanged thoughtful glances, the weight of wisdom sinking deep into the soil of their minds and hearts. Master, another disciple asked, stepping forward timidly, how can one avoid becoming consumed by their own frustrations? Frustration, the Buddha said, is like weeds in a garden. Remove them mindfully, allowing the flowers of peace to thrive unhindered. But weeds always return, the disciple observed, his tone hesitant, questioning the permanence of solutions offered in practice. Weeds, the Buddha replied, can only grow where the soil allows. Cultivate mindfulness, and frustration finds no ground to flourish. The disciples nodded, the simplicity of the metaphor grounding the wisdom in a framework accessible to their daily lives. What if harm breaks trust? The troubled disciple asked, returning to his deep-seated question, his gaze fixed on the Buddha. Trust, the Buddha said, is fragile, yet repairable when nurtured with sincerity, understanding, and actions rooted in kindness. But Master, the disciple asked, if trust cannot be restored, does peace still remain possible? Peace, the Buddha replied, is not dependent on others. but grows within the heart, choosing freedom from resentment and harm. The disciple exhaled deeply, the wisdom shared releasing the tension that had held his spirit captive for far too long. Will I ever find peace, Master? He asked quietly, his vulnerability exposed, longing for assurance amid his uncertain journey. Peace, the Buddha said, is found when you choose to embrace light, letting go of the shadows that burden your heart. The disciple bowed his head. The seeds of hope beginning to sprout within the soil of understanding cultivated that day. The Buddha turned his gaze to all disciples, his voice reaching each soul with clarity, compassion, and profound purpose. Remember, the Buddha said, when harm or negativity arises, respond with wisdom, and refuse to fuel the fires that seek to consume. The disciples bowed, their gratitude expressed through silent reverence. Carrying the teachings into the lives waiting beyond that moment, the troubled disciple stepped back, his heart lighter, his mind clearer, ready to face the storms with newfound resilience. The Buddha rose, his steps purposeful as he left the shade of the tree, his light reaching the shadows beyond. The disciples followed, their footsteps guided by the teachings, prepared to illuminate their paths with the truths shared that day. As the sun set, the echoes of wisdom lingered like whispers carried by the breeze, promising peace to those who listened. Another day, the Buddha journeyed to a distant village where the fragrance of blossoming trees mingled with the hum of life. A disciple named Javaka approached the Buddha, his eyes filled with concern, seeking answers to a lingering turmoil within. Master, Javaka began, his voice trembling, I struggle with individuals who manipulate and deceive, causing harm to others and myself. The Buddha observed Javaka for a moment, his serene expression inviting openness and trust in the sanctuary of his presence. Come with me, Javaka, the Buddha said, gesturing toward the edge of the village where a clear pond reflected the sky. Javaka followed, his heart heavy yet hopeful, eager to find clarity amidst the murkiness of his troubling experiences. The Buddha knelt beside the pond, its surface still except for the occasional ripple from falling leaves or darting fish. Look into the water, Javaka, the Buddha instructed, his voice calm, like a steady breeze brushing gently against the mind. Javaka obeyed, his gaze resting on his reflection, distorted slightly by the faint ripples moving across the pond's surface. What do you see? The Buddha asked, his words deliberate, designed to guide Javaka toward uncovering insight through personal realization. I see myself. Javaka replied hesitantly, uncertain of the lesson hidden within the simplicity of the Master's question. Indeed, the Buddha said, the water shows you as you are. Yet external ripples distort the clarity of your reflection. Javaka frowned, his thoughts racing to connect the metaphor to the struggles he had shared with his revered teacher. The actions of others, the Buddha continued, are like these ripples, disturbing the stillness of your peace if you allow them. But Master, Javaka said, how can one remain undisturbed when the ripples grow into waves, threatening to engulf everything? Peace, the Buddha said, is not destroyed by external disturbances, but by the acceptance of fear and chaos within. The disciples followed, their footsteps light yet purposeful, the weight of his teachings guiding each step. The lake remained, a silent witness to the eternal truths shared by its waters and the enlightened one beside it. Then, Javaka ventured, is it possible to protect oneself without retaliating? To avoid being consumed by their negativity? Protection, the Buddha said, comes from wisdom and mindfulness, which create a barrier that negativity cannot penetrate or stain. Javaka looked back at the pond, the ripples fading slowly, leaving behind an unbroken reflection of the surrounding world. But Master, he asked, how does one act with compassion toward those who harm others without enabling their destructive behavior? Compassion, the Buddha said, is a guiding light, showing the path toward understanding while setting boundaries against actions that cause harm. Javaka nodded. The clarity of the pond now mirrored in his mind as he grasped the depth of the Buddha's words. Master, he said, some harm others intentionally, seeking satisfaction in the suffering they create. How can compassion address such darkness? Even the darkest night, the Buddha replied, cannot extinguish the stars. Compassion shines brighter when faced with the absence of light, but does compassion not leave one vulnerable to repeated harm? Javaka asked, his voice tinged with lingering uncertainty. Vulnerability, the Buddha said, is not weakness but openness. Yet wisdom ensures that compassion does not compromise your safety or well-being. Master, Javaka said, if one acts with compassion but harm continues, is it wise to sever ties with those who harm? Severing ties, the Buddha replied, can be an act of compassion, allowing both to heal without the continued exchange of suffering. But how does one find peace after such separation? Javaka asked, seeking assurance amidst the complexities of relationships and pain. Peace, the Buddha said, is found in letting go, releasing attachment to the hurt caused, and embracing freedom from resentment. Javaka exhaled deeply, the tension in his body diminishing as the Buddha's teachings settled like seeds in fertile soil. Birth, life, death, and rebirth are as natural as the lamp's light. A disciple seated at the edge of the circle raised her hand timidly. Is it wrong, Javaka asked, to wish for those consequences to bring awareness to those who cause harm? Awareness, the Buddha said, arises not from punishment but from understanding. Wishing harm upon others nourishes resentment, not wisdom. So it is with life. He gestured toward the surrounding forest, its vibrant greenery a testament to the cycle of creation. The atoms within your body once resided within stars. When you dissolve, you return to the greater whole. The Buddha stood, his presence calm and unwavering, his light reaching each disciple gathered, their hearts touched by his wisdom. Remember, the Buddha said, that the lotus grows in mud yet remains unstained, finding beauty and strength in the midst of adversity. The disciples bowed, their reverence expressed in silence, each carrying the teachings into their lives as a source of guidance. Javaka remained by the pond, his reflection now clear, understanding that peace begins within, regardless of the turbulence outside. The Buddha turned and walked away, his steps light yet purposeful, his teachings like ripples expanding far beyond the moment. As the sun set, the village basked in the warmth of the lessons left behind, echoes of wisdom carried by the breeze. A scholar among them, driven by a thirst for understanding, spoke, Master, science teaches conservation of energy. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.